Welcome to the Own It Powercast, the place to be when you get serious about making big changes and accelerating growth in your life and in your relationships. Finally create the life you've always wanted, living life on your own terms. Learn how to take your fear and turn it into powerful choices that will create sustained change. Now your host, Mary Baker.
Hey everyone, welcome back to the Own It Powercast, the place to come to get what you need to move yourself forward. Hey, it's Mary Baker and welcome to episode 298. When safe doesn't feel emotionally safe, what your body is trying to tell you. Well, welcome back as we finish out this month, which has been all about reclaiming parts of you that got lost through maybe old conditioning, trauma, or just relationships where you had to disconnect from you to survive. And so we've been talking all month about learning to trust yourself, learning to trust your gut, and to try to stop abandoning yourself in the moment. Last week, we got into self-trust and learning how to more consistently show up for yourself in your life. And this week, the way we can help ourselves do that is talk about something that we've touched on in many different ways here on the show, but that is trusting your body and mostly your gut. Now, there are moments when someone seems really warm, really generous, like even eager to connect with you, but your body just quietly recoils, like your chest tightens or you feel really drained after being around them. Something feels off, but you can't explain why. Well, today we're going to talk about why your nervous system might be the first to recognize that maybe a relationship isn't emotionally safe. We're going to unpack how the body, your subconscious, and the brain all track those subtle cues that help you determine safety, and how to learn how to listen when your body says, you know what, this doesn't feel right, even when someone seems very nice. So this is just a topic that really has been out there more and more these days. We're really talking about neuroscience and trauma and the body. So the good thing is this isn't going to be unfamiliar to you. But maybe it's really just remembering, like, your body is always scanning for safety, even if your brain is not. So even if you don't realize it, your body is constantly reading the room. And this is thanks to something called neuroception. And that is your nervous system's ability to detect safety or threat without you consciously thinking about it. It's the reason you might instantly relax around someone who feels steady and kind, or feel tense or foggy or on edge around someone who seems really nice, but something feels off. And here's the thing, you might not always know why a person makes you feel uneasy, but your nervous system does. Because guess what? It's picking up on subtle cues like tone of voice, facial expressions, inconsistent behavior, or even the way someone invades your emotional or physical space a little too quickly. And this can trigger feelings like suddenly feeling tired, maybe even exhausted around them. Maybe feeling jumpy or over alert even when nothing bad is happening. Or maybe going like blank or foggy, unsure of what to say or do. One we don't talk about enough is this instant desire to want to please or perform rather than just be yourself. So be that really nice neighbor, be that person in the grocery store who's very kind. And then maybe a deep sense of like shutdown or wanting to withdraw or pull away without a clear reason. What's most important to understand is that these are not overreactions. They're messages. Because your body's trying to tell you this doesn't feel safe. Now, why do we miss these signs? And why do we learn to override what we feel? You know where I'm going to go. If you grew up in an environment where expressing your truth, like your needs, your discomfort, or your instincts, if that led to punishment or rejection or even subtle emotional withdrawal from a caregiver, well, you likely learned ways to suppress those signals. And so your body may have told you something felt very unsafe, but survival required you to override that feeling. You had to stay connected, maybe stay agreeable, maybe even stay small. But that meant ignoring your gut and performing what others wanted from you. And so as adults, what we need to know is that those survival patterns don't just vanish. In fact, they often get stronger in relationships where discomfort arises. We start telling ourselves things like, well, they didn't really mean it, or maybe I'm just being too sensitive, or I really should give them the benefit of the doubt. We all have bad days, or they're just struggling. I think we rationalize red flags because we know acknowledging them might require conflict, setting boundaries, or walking away. And that can feel terrifying when we were trained to believe that keeping the peace was far more important than keeping ourselves safe. But the more we override, the more disconnected we become from our own inner compass. And that's why healing often begins with one small act. Noticing what you feel and believing it matters, even if you don't understand it. Instead, what we typically do is say, well, they were just being nice, even when it felt like it was like too fast, too intense, or too intrusive. I came across someone like that yesterday, and I felt very uncomfortable. A person was being very nice in the store, but something wasn't right. And it was very interesting because towards the end of the conversation, I noticed a lack of boundaries. And they were just being very kind and offering help and all the things. And I'm like, you don't know me well enough to offer that. So not all generosity is rooted in emotional health. And we need to remember that. Because sometimes, like this woman yesterday, what looks like kindness is actually a lack of boundaries in disguise. And that is very, very important. If you take nothing away today but that, that's good. People who don't feel secure in themselves may overextend, they may overshare, or they're going to say yes to everything, not because they're truly available, but because they're desperate for connection or approval. And I got that sense from this person. And while it might look loving and caring and friendly on the surface, your body often picks up the deeper truth. Now here's what this can look like. They say yes to every request, even when it's too much, because they're afraid of disappointing you. Or maybe they overshare deeply personal things a little too quickly, and it's creating a false sense of intimacy. Or they disregard your need for space or quiet or time, and they're pushing for closeness in such a pleasant way, which is on their timeline. Or when you let them down, they might use guilt or compliments or vague confusion to keep you close and off balance. Now, we know these behaviors often come from their own wounding, but they still can have an impact. To you, they can feel smothering or intrusive, or I would say even manipulative. And your nervous system knows this because true safety respects pace, boundaries, and individuality. So if something feels off, even when someone seems kind or generous, trust that feeling, because it may be your body picking up on a dynamic that isn't as emotionally safe as it appears. Now, even when you don't consciously remember every painful experience, your body and subconscious mind do. And this is how old harm can get reawakened. Your subconscious is like a vault. And much to my client's chagrin, it stores emotional memories, patterns of harm, and moments when connection felt unsafe for you. It holds on to how it felt to be ignored, manipulated, shamed, or blamed, even if you couldn't even name those dynamics at the time, even if you don't even remember who that was that did that to you. And this is why, as an adult, you might meet someone and everything on the surface seems fine, but something in your body goes tight. You feel guarded, drained, maybe on edge. You start to think, what's wrong with me? But it's not about the present moment alone. What's happening is your body is flagging a familiar danger. And the current interaction mirrors something from the past. And your nervous system is alerting you before your logical brain can catch up, just like it does for every other danger, like a hot stove, a thunderstorm, a loud noise, things like that. This is not paranoia. This is your body doing its job. It's protecting you based on stored experience. Remember, if we didn't have those experiences stored, we wouldn't live very long, would we? Because we wouldn't understand how to avoid danger. And I think for a lot of folks who haven't looked in their past yet or don't want to think that their mom or their sister or their brother or their best friend could have done that to them, they're going to have an even harder time. Okay, so one of the things you want to do today, if you haven't already done it, is kind of think about, wow, who was like that with me? And you don't have to remember a name and her face. You don't have to remember details as much as you want to remember moments as a kid or a teenager or whatever where you felt that way. That's what matters. Someone was unkind. Someone had poor boundaries with you. Someone guilted, shamed, or manipulated you. That kind of thing. The only other piece to that matters is the more important they were in your life, the more impactful the damage. So your body speaks before your brain does. And one of the most powerful practices you can build is pausing regularly throughout the day to ask yourself, what does safe feel like in my body? And what does too much feel like? And we're all different. I mean, there are some universal clues, but we're all different. Start noticing what happens in your body in different interactions. Safety for you, safety might feel like your shoulders relax. They drop a little bit. Maybe your breathing becomes more regular and easy and deeper. Maybe you feel grounded in your seat or your feet. You can speak honestly without bracing for impact. You can just be yourself. There's this gentle sense of, you know what? I don't need to perform right now. I can just say what I need to say, share what I feel, share what I think. By contrast, too much might feel like your chest is a little tight or your gut is clenched. You might start getting a headache, body aches. You can have a frozen or a foggy or hyper alert feeling, and you can think it's something else like, oh, maybe I'm just stressed today or whatever. You might have the urge to say what someone wants to hear, even if it's not true. Something that puts you in a good light. You find yourself pushing down your discomfort so things don't get awkward and you don't come off as rude. And then maybe a subtle panic that you have to be okay to keep the peace, to keep the conversation going. Somatic check-ins, which is what these are, aren't about overanalyzing. I think they're about building a relationship with our own inner signals. When you start trusting those quiet cues, what's really cool is you stop needing everything to make sense right away, because it often won't. We often see things in hindsight. All you're doing is honoring what you feel and letting that be enough. And also, you can tell yourself, I really don't have enough information yet, but what I do know is something feels off. And what I work with clients around is, okay, where's the fire? Why can't we let this play out? We don't have to take any further steps to be with this person, commit to anything, take that job, like all the things. We can allow time to play out. And in fact, even setting that boundary by saying, well, I have to think about it, or can I get back to you, or I got a lot on my plate right now, and see what their reaction is. Because people with halfway decent boundaries are going to say, yeah, sure, absolutely. People who don't probably aren't even going to be able to end the conversation. I had someone like that the other day too, and I kept saying I needed to go, and she just couldn't stop talking. Some journaling prompts you can use that might be helpful. You can ask yourself, when do I feel like I'm disappearing to stay connected? When do I feel like I'm disappearing to stay connected? Now, what came up for you when you heard that? And hopefully later you can replay this and journal about it. I think that'd be a good idea. but what came up right now? And then the next one, when does my body go still, go tight, or numb around certain people? And I wonder why that is. So really just practicing learning to slow down, name what you're sensing. You name it so you give it respect that you're listening, and honor that cue without needing proof yet, or maybe never. Sometimes we don't get that answer. We just know we walk away and say, yeah, something felt really weird about that. I can tell you that sometimes it was a long time later where I ran into a different person who knew the person that I felt uncomfortable around. And then I got more data. I'm like, okay, that makes more sense, right? It'll come. The biggest piece here is I want you to know is you don't have to justify what feels off. And that is a big deal for people, especially if they were, let's say, gaslit a little bit growing up or in previous relationships where they had to prove that. No, you don't. You don't need a list of reasons to honor your discomfort. If you're uncomfortable, you're uncomfortable. You don't need to justify why someone's energy feels off or why you feel tired or anxious or confused after spending time with them. Emotional safety is felt. It's not argued or explained. And that's important. You're allowed to take space, you're allowed to set boundaries, or even change course, even if no one else understands why. Do you see the detachment in that phrase? Even if no one else understands why. And reminding yourself that knowing in your body is enough. That is a big part of your truth. Your body's no matters. Especially in relationships where someone wants your closeness without clarity or responsibility. Boy, your nervous system will often pick up on that big mismatch. Maybe they flatter you, they share too much too soon. They lean on you emotionally without really showing up for you in return. And it might feel like love, but it's more like love bombing, and that's why your body's tightening. But your thoughts start to race, you start abandoning your own pace just to match theirs. That is a big red flag. That's your body saying, something's not right. And you don't have to wait for proof. You just have to listen and practice honoring that by being brave and taking your time and setting boundaries. So I want to talk about, and of course I've changed the names, but a client that I worked with a while back, someone who struggled around why does she feel so drained around him? So Lauren that I worked with was a 37-year-old graphic designer, and she came to coaching feeling really anxious and overwhelmed, but only in certain relationships. And one in particular we talked about a lot, and that was a new friend she met through a networking group. She's like, he's super generous and he's always saying the right things, but I leave every interaction feeling exhausted and I don't know why. So at first she blew it off and she told herself she was just being too sensitive, or maybe that was just her social anxiety. A lot of people think that. But as we worked together, she started checking in with her body and she noticed that she held her breath during their conversations. She couldn't finish her own thoughts without being interrupted. And she often left with this tightness in her jaw and like this buzzing in her chest. Now, her friend was very charismatic and he drew her in, but we realized he also talked over her. He pushed her for deeper connection very quickly, and then he subtly guilted her when she set boundaries. And people can be really smooth and slick about that. And it may not look like a boundary issue at first, but afterwards, after you go through it, you notice. So once Lauren began listening to her body's cues and we talked about what was happening, everything shifted for her. And she didn't need a dramatic confrontation. That's what we walked through. And she just started trusting her own nervous system. She started slowing things down for herself when she interacted with people. And she created space. But the other thing she did, which I think is extremely important, is that she was able to run this experience also by a few close friends who I think have become more in tune with their own authentic selves. So they got it and they could support her. And I think as a result, she felt a lot more grounded, more clear, and more connected to herself again. So just like Lauren, you don't need proof to honor your intuition ever. If your body is telling you something doesn't feel safe, you're allowed to listen. In fact, you're strongly encouraged to. That is reason enough. I mean, take a moment and think about the times when you didn't listen to your gut and how right on it was. I know it's been the same for me, and so we don't get the information often until later after the fact. But we need to look at what were some of the consequences of not listening to our gut. I think that forgiving yourself for not listening, maybe understanding today more why you learned how to disconnect from yourself, and then practice. Just throughout the day, checking in, notice when you talk to everyone in your life, people that you know, people that you don't know, and just do an internal experiment, like see how it feels and why. And really think about boundaries and passive-aggressive behavior and overstepping and allowing space. And what do you know about that person too? So the people that you do know in your life, what do you know about them? What do you know about their behavior, their other relationships, maybe their upbringing, maybe their past trauma? Because all the pieces do fit together. And I think the mental pieces of knowing about healthy boundaries and knowing about detachment and healthy relationships versus unhealthy, paired with your subconscious and your intuition and your body. And I think if you clue into all of that, you're going to feel more grounded. You're going to feel more at peace. And I do personally think that if you've been through it in your life, that this is also the way that you honor yourself and you show yourself that you can keep yourself safe. And that's really, really important. And if you need help with that, reach out. Check the links in the show notes. I have courses. There's one-on-one work you can do with me. I think the Find Your Voice course is the best because it has a group coaching component, so you have people there to help you along. So today we explored how your nervous system, your subconscious, and your body are all constantly scanning for emotional safety, even when your logical mind doesn't really know why something feels off. We talked about how your body might respond to subtle relational red flags long before your brain catches on, especially when people are being very kind and generous and seem very emotionally available on the surface. And we got into how these intuitive hits aren't irrational. They're rooted in lived experience. They're those stored patterns in your brain, and it's how your brain and body protect you. And then we got into where's the start? Where's the disconnection from your body and your intuition start? And ways you may have had to override your instincts to really survive. I know that sounds odd saying it that way out loud, but that's what was happening. And as adults, it can make it harder to trust ourselves, to trust our gut, and to pay attention to those signals. Often you don't even see them. But it takes quiet awareness, checking in with safe people, and beginning to believe your body again. That can really help you have better relationships. Thank you so much for being here today. I hope this month of episodes has been helpful for you to reconnect with self, and please pass along to those you think might benefit. And if you are really struggling to find the courage to show up for yourself, check out my Find Your Voice course. And if you want to talk about what it's about, if you have any questions, please reach out. I answer every email and every message. All right, so pay it forward, keep focusing on you, and I'll see you next time.
We hope you took away some useful insights and tools you can begin using right away. If you did, please leave a positive review and share on your social media. Because could you imagine if everyone in your life really got it together? Remember, own it now, so you can really own it later.